Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. Before I went to seminary, and while I was in seminary, I was a meteorologist. So when I went to seminary and learned about Jesus and wanting to, and saying that there was a prophet, and these sort of readings we had today about what a prophet is and what a prophet might expect. Having already been a meteorologist, I didn't want to be a prophet. Then I thought, well, what do I want to be? Do I want to be a counselor? I had studied psychology, and I thought that I could help people that way. I had a feeling of compassion. Maybe I would be a counselor, a healer, hopefully. And that was an option. Or should I be a theologian? I really like studying. I really like finding out where these words came from and what they mean and how they were translated and what the message was. I'd like to be a theologian. What would I do in the church if I was a theologian? You know, they would not have any contact with people, probably. So I decided I didn't want to be a theologian, although I love theology. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to serve at the altar. I loved the services. I had a story about when I first came to the Episcopal Church. I'm an Episcopal priest, as some of you know. I was brought up a Mormon, and the way the story goes, my uncle was a bishop in his business suit, and we had bread and water every Sunday. And then when my mother and father split, I came to the Congregational Church, where only the robes were on the choir, and we had bread and grape juice in little shot glasses once a quarter. And I used to steal the shot glasses. But when I was in college, I met a girl who was a lifelong Episcopalian, and she took me to Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. And there was this great stained glass windows and beautiful arches and lovely music, and the choir and the priests and all vestments marching all around the place with this beautiful music and song. And they had bread and wine every day. And I said, surely God is in this place. And so I served in the Episcopal Church, and I served and I left parish ministry and went into teaching and counseling for a long time as a marriage and family counselor in California. And then I went back to sea because I had been a merchant marine officer and a sailor before all of this, and sailed for quite a few years. Anchored in Lahaina, Maui, most of the time, at anchor, living there. And I met Shirley, my wife now, for a while, and she was anchored. She came down from Alaska, anchored in a boat nearby, and 3 days later we decided to get married. She didn't know I was a priest, and I said to her, before that, we went to a costume shop, you know, where they have period costumes, and they take this picture of you, and we each went into this place and saw what we wanted, but we didn't see what each other was getting until we were all dressed. And I came out with a frock coat on, a collar, a hat with a buckle on it, and the Bible in my hands. And she came out as a dance girl with a corset and a boa, and her leg crossed over her, with a little dimple in her leg. And she looked at me and she said, "How could you do that? I thought you would be a sea captain or a dandy or something like that, and here you are, a pilgrim." I said, "Well, you know I'm an Episcopal priest." She didn't. She says, and this was just afterwards as we were talking about it, I was just in a pair of shorts, I think, and she said, "What do you wear?" So I went and I got a clergy collar, dog collar we call them, and I put that on, and she went. She had no clue that she was going to be a clergy wife, because I was a sailor at that time. And when we got the call to serve in the church in Lahaina, it was a question, do I want to do that or not? And our boat was out there, all provisioned and ready to go across the Pacific. And I said, no. And she jumps up and down. We're in a coffee shop. She jumps up, down, and says, what you always have said you wanted to serve as an interim at Holy Innocents. Well, an interim, that's about 1 year job, and then you don't get to stay. But the bishop made a better offer. He said, if you want this job, you can have tenure. He says, it's a troubled parish, you have the skills to deal with that. And so we did. We made a commitment to say 7 years. And we counted the days each year. How much would my pension be if I left this year? In the Episcopal Church, they had so many years of service, and during that you needed, and then in that time, what is the average of 7 years of pay? What is the highest average? So the highest 2 or 3 years, I guess. So as long as I stayed there, I could get away from what I was making in the 60s and the 70s when I was first ordained. Not very much. And Lahaina was a high-end church and paid pretty well. And if I stayed there long enough, we would get a half pension, because it all depends on how many years service I've served as well. If you stay 30 years, you get a full pension. But we stayed, I had 12, 15 years of service, so I got a half pension, which was enough with Social Security. We left the church on the day that I said we would, and we came here, and we were sitting in the back of an Easter service. I can remember Tasha was leading the choir, and I didn't wear, I wore vestments, or clergy collar, but I wasn't sure how I would be received in this hometown, because we had gone to McKinsey's bar the night before to watch the Olympics or whatever it was on a big screen television. So that was my introduction. What will the evangelical Lutheran Church, must be really straight, what would it be like if they know that we were at the bar the night before? But nobody seemed to care, or even know, I guess. Nobody else was there at the bar. And Ernie came to visit us that afternoon and welcome us to the church, and would you be interested in helping out with the services? And our administrator at that time said, oh, good. She said, will you be our minister, sort of just working on Sunday. I said, I will preach every Sunday if you want, but I won't do anything else. No committees, no council, no other things, no calling on people. And I'm retired, but I love to preach. And Shirley said, not every Sunday. So I don't preach every Sunday, but Gina and I are alternating now, and from time to time we've had other people, Jean Barrington and so on. And so it's not always been not even every other Sunday. But I love to preach. I love to study. I love to look at the theology of it and then come out and do it. What is your passion? Why do you come to church? What is it that you want? Is it bread and wine every Sunday? Or is it something more? Is it something deeper? What is the commission? You're called to be, like the second part of our story today, to go out and don't carry a whole lot of baggage. Go out and preach the gospel. Go out in your life to show what the gospel is. You don't have to be a Jesus freak to do that. You don't have to stand on the corner with a soapbox and say the world is coming to the end. Everybody knows that. The end is coming for all of us, not just in the current things like our psalm says. We've had enough of this horrible derision, save us from that. What our own life is like You know, I look at my life now, and I'm getting up there in years, and so I have different priorities. You know, how much do we want to invest in making the house better when we only have maybe relatively a few more years to live? How much do I want to invest in the helicopter flight insurance to Bellingham in case I have a heart attack? They said one of the things you have to watch out about is you have sleep apnea. If you have sleep apnea, you might get a stroke or something while you're asleep. So I went and took the test. You know, they put you to sleep, or they put you in a room, they put you in this ball wired up, all kinds of sensors and so on, and camera watching you all the time. You can't sleep. You hardly breathe, you know. They said toward the end, they said, you know, you have quite a bit of long gaps in there, and you snore a lot. Well, I know that, but if I sleep on my side, I don't snore. But with all this stuff on, I couldn't sleep on my side. I pulled the mask off eventually because it kept pouring, you know, you take a tiny sip of air and it just comes storming out. They turned it way up because they wanted me to get more oxygen. Well, it felt like I was, what waterboarding must be like. I felt like I was drowning in this air. So I pulled the mask off after about 7 hours. You're supposed to do it for 8 hours. And I said, I would rather die in my sleep than go through this again. And I will never wear one of these masks. And that's it. I would rather die in my sleep. But, you know, I don't want to have a stroke. So we got hit the insurance that may take us to the hospital. So that's what it is. You have to make your priorities. What is it in your life for the short time we have left in our lives? The short time. Most of us are over middle age. We're on the other side of the hill. What do you want to do with your life? Have you made a difference in people's lives? When I decided to go into the ministry, I said, I want to make the difference in 1 or 2 people's lives, and that will be enough if I could do that. Just something small, but to do something worthwhile, to make a difference. And a lot of people here that I know, I see, have made a lot of difference in my life, and probably in a lot of others. And you ought to feel good about that. You ought to feel good about that. But don't give up if it's been frustrating. If they reject you in your hometown, just keep doing it anyway. Doesn't matter what success you have. What matters is that your heart is in it, that you have faith, that you have trust in God, that God is with you and you can feel that. That's the message. So are you ready to make that decision, or have you already made it? Keep thinking about that and keep doing it. Amen.